Good evening, everyone. I am A.V. Venugopal, a Senior Research Associate for Urban Development at the Institute for Transportation Development Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the online workshop number 7, the final workshop of stage 1 of the Streets for People Challenge. Let's begin by taking a quick look at the agenda, which is shared on your screen. We will start with an introductory address by Mr. Kunal Kumar, IAS, Joint Secretary, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Next, the City of Cochin will present their Tactical Urbanism Design and Implementation Plan. We have with us today Mr. Jafar Malik IAS, Cochin Smart Mission Limited CEO, and Mr. Adarsh Kapoor, Urban Designer and Architect, Consultant to GIZ, who will be making the presentation on behalf of Cochin City. As someone who has been born and brought up in the city of Cochin, I'm very excited to see what the city has in store for the on-ground transformation. We have 2 crisp presentations also lined up. The first presentation is on scale-up, measuring impact of the pilots and capturing learnings. The second one will speak about the submission templates and the evaluation process for stage 1. We will have a Q&A session to address your queries after each presentation. As always, before we jump in, I'd like to highlight a few housekeeping rules that would have been embedded in your brain for most of you. But nevertheless, participants and panelists feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the session. When you do address a chat, do mark it to panelists and attendees while sending the chat. Type your questions on the Q&A box, and our team will shortlist these questions for the Q&A session. If you are tuned in on YouTube, our team is active on YouTube and will pick questions that you share on the chat box on YouTube as well. Finally, on Zoom, you have the option to also upvote a particular question that you might like that someone else has raised, and it will help bring it up for our attention. Without further ado, since Kunal sir is yet to join us, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Rahul Kapoor, Director, Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Venu. Of course, we are here for the 7th workshop on Streets for People. And I think this is probably the final workshop before we go on with the selection process and the evaluation. And for the cities that have been engaged with us for the last so many weeks, and even during the worst time of the pandemic, and still keeping that momentum going, I would like to really thank all of you for being with us as part of this journey. But then the real work begins now. So of course, what this challenge has really done is it has created an opportunity for all of us to reclaim our streets and streets for people. So most of the times when you start imagining a cities, we start thinking about the fantastic buildings that are there, the kind of infrastructure that the city provides. But the most important element is the people of the city, and how as urban planners, as city designers, and how as government administration, we are able to create the kind of an enabling environment that allows people to engage, communities to engage. And Street for People, along with the other challenges that we had initiated over the last 1 year or so, is one of those important initiatives. And this is basically to improve our public spaces, to improve focus on placemaking, and of course, testing some of those new solutions and scaling them up. And with that kind of an objective, I think the time to basically test out those interventions, learn from them and scale them up is there right in front of us. And some of the important things that we have noticed, that we have 41 cities that had rolled out design competitions across the country on the Street for People Challenge. And we have 21 cities that have actually identified winners and initiated steps to plan their ongoing pilots on ground. So through the Streets for People Challenge, nearly 2,000 teams of designers, architects, and professionals around the country registered to participate in the competition. So this is a great way of actually engaging with the community, engaging with all stakeholders who are concerned with the cities. So it's not really a top-down approach wherein there's a template or a design that is made by the ministry and then circulated to all. But this is something that is coming up bottoms up through engagements with the people, and the kind of effort that the cities have undertaken to engage through various innovative ways and mechanisms, considering the kind of voting process that Nashik and Vijayawada rolled out in their cities, where they actually showcase the entries to their entire community through open street events and social media channels. And then coordinating teams of the challenge also shared a very important feedback. And today we have Kochi Smart City that will be sharing with us on how they have taken this challenge approach, and it has actually helped them to capture the citizens' feedback very extensively, and that has actually gone on to design and shape their and contextualize their design to the local context and local requirements. We have several other cities such as Bengaluru, Vijayawada, that have hosted on-ground exhibitions to showcase the shortlisted design solutions for the jurors and the citizens. And we have nearly 30 cities that conducted walking audits with the participants. So this definitely facilitates and better understanding of the site, and of course the stakeholder consultations give you the direct feedback. And so at the time when the project implementation actually takes place, because these are living markets we are talking about, these are streets where there is an ongoing activity, and we're trying to improve upon that. We are so whenever there's a change that needs to be brought about, behavior change management also becomes a very important component. So by keeping the communication channels open, by engaging with the concerned stakeholders, those who are going to get affected with the project, that way you can ease out some of these hindrances that normally come up while executing these projects. And that, I think, is going to be a great learning for all of us to see and share. These workshops are what's one such platform. Of course, this is probably the last in the initial series, and we will definitely have subsequent workshops post the selection process, and even dissemination workshops wherein we will share the learnings from this exercise. And I'm very sure that most of you would be making best use of the kind of resources that are available on the Streets for People website, and basically learn from those, even if you have not directly participated in the piloting stage, but probably you may have understood the importance of this challenge subsequently and would like to adopt it in your cities. So it's never too late. I mean, this is the kind of platform that we're trying to build, which is going to be evolving, which is going to be sustainable, and you can anytime connect to this network that we are building. So this family of Streets for People would welcome all of you to partner with us, to participate in future iterations as well, and also to imbibe the best practices that would have evolved through this process. So I would not take much time. I think we can start, and as soon as the Joint Secretary Shri Kunal Kumar joins in, we can request him to share his thoughts with the group. Over to you, Vin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahul, sir, for those inspiring words and for giving a summary of where cities are at as well. 41 cities have launched the design competition. They've come a long way engaging in the different tools, like you said, with citizen engagement, walking audits. And inspired by these cities, even last week, a couple of new cities had launched the design competition, which shows the impact and goodwill that not just this challenge, but all the challenges anchored by the mission are creating in the people and how it connects with the people. And we know more about the experience of Kochi on that front. Moving to the next segment of the workshop, I'd like to invite Ashwati Dilip, Senior Program Manager at ITDP, who leads the Complete Streets Strategy, Policy, and Project Works. Ashwati, over to you.
Thank you so much, Venu. Thank you so much, Rahul sir, for your initial comments as well. I'm just going to share my screen. Just let me know if you can see that. Firstly,
yes, it's visible.
Can you? Yes, yeah. Thanks, Venu. Firstly, I'd like to, again, with Venu as well as Rahul sir, welcome all the cities to our last workshop prior to our submission for the Streets for People. I hope all of your families and you have been safe during this really troubling times of the pandemic. And we'd really like to sort of, talk about all the work that you've done so far. And it's been such a celebration just to see how even during these testing times, you all have come together and kept your citizens in the forefront, working towards how you can create some really interesting and safe public spaces for our citizens to step out. So it's fantastic that 41 cities have launched the Streets for People design competition, and 28 cities, including Bhopal, Pune, and Bangalore, have conducted walking audits with nearly 1,000 registrants for the design competition. I remember initially talking about how there's a need for us to create an army of designers who need to come together to transform our cities. And that's exactly what each one of you have done. You all have come up, stepped up to support your cities transform themselves. So thank you so much. 21 cities, including Chandigarh, Nagpur, and Kochi, have identified winners. It's fantastic to see the progress that you all have made. And to all the other 20 cities, we really encourage you to identify your winners and work with your winners in refining your design solutions. These cities, 21 cities, have initiated work towards pilot testing. And as we heard, we will hear from Kochi about what their plans are. And we encourage each one of you to learn from the city and see how you can put those learnings into your own testing phases. And equal number of cities have also initiated their work for the scale-up activities, which looks at embedding this transformation towards a longer-term change. So without taking too much time, I would really like to invite the team from Cochin Smart City Mission Limited to share their plans for testing the tactical urbanism interventions in their city and how they plan to roll out, even in these, with the pandemic sort of looming as well. Over to you, Team Kochi.
Am I audible?
Yes, Adarshan, you're audible.
Okay, so I have the CEO of the Smart City Limited over here, Mr. Ghaffar Malik as well. I'm presenting on behalf of Kochi Smart City Limited, and I'll try to keep it crisp and give more time towards questions and answers and try to address all the questions that we get. Just a brief background. So before the S4P challenge started, Kochi was working towards an integrated transport vision for the Matancherry and Fort Kochi area in Kochi city. And this vision looked into providing infrastructure for walking, cycling, sustainable modes of transport, and all kinds of facilities required for enhancing walking, cycling infrastructure. With that beginning, the S4P challenge gave a great push towards implementing some of the pilot interventions. The S4P challenge provided focus on stakeholder consultation and testing some suggestions which had behavioral impacts and behavioral changes. This is one of the biggest achievements that we found from the program, and which helped both Kochi Smart City Limited, the municipal corporation, and the team of experts involved to rationalize some of the design suggestions and work towards implementation of these. There were two sites which were taken up, the Vasco Square area and the Kalvati-Eruveli Canal area. The Vasco Square area is one of the most important heritage sites of Fort Kochi zone and attracts a lot of tourists around the year. It also hosts one of the largest public space biennales of the country. So this particular site had a lot of tourists coming in. The other site that was chosen up was a low and mid-income neighborhood in Kochi, which was Kalvati and Eruveli. So through these two sites, our team and Smart City Limited tested the strategies which are suitable for both kinds of areas. One where you have large number of tourists, and the other one which is more closer to the neighborhoods and people. At the same time, we realized that this whole program was giving us a lot of opportunity to also figure out what are the permanent transformations which are required, which some way or the other, the city was working through the Smart City Mission, through Amrut, through various other schemes of Government of India. So this gave an important chance for Kochi Smart City Limited to also converge with various government initiatives. So if you look at this, there are bus routes which are planned. There is one zone which have been taken up by TUMI, for improvement of interchange facilities near boat jetties. And then we have the smart S4P program where we were reclaiming space for walking and cycling within these areas through tactical intervention. Eventually, we identified that through S4P challenge, we were able to build consensus amongst the community and the Smart City Limited to prioritize some of the streets for permanent improvement of cycling and walking infrastructure. This became one of a very good medium to build that kind of a consensus. Now, one thing that I should highlight over here is Kochi, Fort Kochi area. The width of streets range from 2.5 meters. Some of the narrow streets are 2.5 meter wide and go up to 12 and 18 meter wide streets. So we are looking at very narrow streets. So the kind of solutions that we had to work out for Fort Kochi area had to be contextual, encourage people to use walking and cycling, and bring down the traffic speeds, vehicle speeds, especially in 1 or 2 corridors where the speeds were very high. So we used various options, permutations, and combinations of walking and cycling infrastructure. We also use S4P program to test what are the opportunities for NMT improvements. So for example, where can we do NMT only streets? How do we reclaim parking spaces for pedestrian and other kinds of public space active usage? How do we accommodate spillover of hotels within the streets? How do we create interactive streets near schools? So all kinds of models were tested through this program. How do we look at local market precincts, neighborhood streets, neighborhood junctions? How do we create employment through various opportunities? How do we make narrow alleys vibrant and lit up? And how do we reclaim the backyards of some of these areas? With that background, we started working on various permutations and combinations of street improvement. I'll skip this part and I'll quickly come to the tactical interventions. Now, the reason why we showed this is one of the immediate success of S4P program was that the Smart City Limited decided that they will immediately take up all the permanent interventions as part of the Smart City proposals. So if you see the kind of drawings that you see, these are prepared for implementation, which can immediately go into implementation. So that was a very big success for the S4P program. And we then identified tactical interventions which align with these permanent interventions. So for the first zone, Vasco Square area. So this is where we have a lot of tourists coming at this zone annually and even during the Biennale. So we use events and activities as the medium to define what are the kind of tactical interventions required. I'll go through the kind of tactical interventions subsequently and explain that. So the idea over here was to create public space for the city, provide opportunities for visitors to come to the city, to come to this part of an area, use tactical intervention to encourage visitors to come to the site and use public transport, water metro, electric vehicles, cycles, and walking facilities to move around in this area. And then TU should encourage visitors to walk and cycle in this area. That was the intent. And if you look at this particular part, this is the Vasco Square area and the Vasco Square Plaza that is there. We use this as an opportunity to create event zones, tactical interventions, starting off cycling corridors, starting off walking corridors, starting off event zones. And I'll show you how we did this through simple graphics. This is one of the plaza area, and the plaza otherwise is good, but there were very basic, simple problems that parking was blocking some of the areas, hawkers were blocking. So we started organizing some of them. And we started using some of the cultural and local artifacts and crafts to make this area more vibrant. We also made sure that we use most of the recyclable material lying around to make these areas vibrant. This is again, so on the right side, you have the plaza, and this is the river road. The river road is already there, but people don't use it for cycling. To encourage people to use it for cycling, this is already pedestrianized. We now try to make this more vibrant and let people realize that this is for cycling corridor. Organize vendors. So like I said, there are various actions and various schemes that Smart City Limited is working upon. And this was a very good opportunity for them to converge all of those. For example, they're already working on organizing vendors through vending policies. So this gives them an opportunity to test vending zones and how do they organize it. They're already working on a parking policy. This also gave them an opportunity to see how do they rationalize some of the parking and avoid spillover of parking. So this area, if you look at right now, the two-wheelers come all the way up to the plaza, whereas the rest of the plaza is now lying vacant. So we thought, why don't we restrict two-wheelers to a certain point, and then through tactical interventions, reclaim some of this space for kids' activity, resting, recreation, those kind of interventions. There's already a stage over there. We thought, why don't we use this at the time of events to encourage people to gather and interact and realize the benefit of a public space for an area like this. This is River Road, and the Kochi Binale already happens over here. We thought, why don't we create an opportunity for cycling and walking corridors and integrate this with the Binale event. The Princess Street area has hotels on either sides of the street, and during peak tourist season, we see a lot of Kochi witnesses a lot of tourist footfall in this area. So we thought, why don't we allow spillover of hotels and have food events in this particular street, pedestrianize it, yet allow cycling to happen through this area. We had one round of discussion with the hotels, and the hotels loved the idea. They thought that this is a good opportunity for them, even for encouraging the economic activities for the hotels. The area is part of a heritage zone, and we had to be very sensitive towards the heritage character. We had initial rounds of discussion with stakeholders where, though they loved the idea, they sounded off some of the heritage requirements. We use that as an opportunity to define the kind of color and material palette that we would eventually use. Then we come to the Kalvati Road and Eravali Road area. Now, like I said, this area is a local neighborhood, and the requirements over here are for the local community. We don't expect too many tourists to come over here, but we definitely expect people from this community and the surrounding areas to visit it. And if it creates opportunity for people from other parts of the city to come over here, then that allows additional economic opportunity for the residents of this area. So the idea over here was to create spaces for local neighborhood and local residents. This area currently lacks designated green and open spaces. There is one park. There are very small parks and zones for kids. We were hoping, and we've anyways attempted to increase the quantum of active green areas for residents themselves. The quality of existing canal and edge requires improvement, and through this program, we are now attempting to improve the condition of the canal through bioremediation and other means. The TU should also transform some of the local streets and spaces. That was the overall intent. This is the area that we are talking about. And at the center of this area, we have a market. And towards the north, we have a school. I'll quickly go through. So this is a school edge. And right now, though it's right at the heart of a local neighborhood, because of the quality of street, the school also is not able to realize the benefit of the street. We thought, why don't we convert this school edge into an interactive zone for kids? Why don't we use the canal edge for creating public space for people who come to the school or pass through these areas? This is another street which is in the center of the neighborhood. As you can see, the houses on either sides are mostly of lower and middle income groups. We thought, why don't we use the same street space for creating spaces for kids to play, and some spaces where planting, some street furniture can happen. So the street itself starts acting like a public space. The mini market area, otherwise the frontage of the mini market right now is being used as a parking zone. And we thought this created an opportunity to provide a community space. There's enough space. We had one round of discussion with the stakeholders. They liked the idea. So now we are trying to figure out how do we make this a permanent intervention. The back of mini market, the very interesting space, lies completely derelict. And we now want to transform this into an active space for people to come, rest, enjoy the space, and interact with their friends. The edge of the canal from the mini market zone has been conceptualized as an urban farming zone. And this would provide the local community an opportunity to not just use the space, but use the space both for recreation and some amount of economic benefit. We were also thinking of adopting means of bioremediation of the canal, simpler samples where there are floating plants which to a certain extent purify the water. And this is something that we are still testing. We're trying to work out technical details for this. All the others are now towards an implementation stage where we go into implementation very soon. These are some narrow connecting streets. Like I said, some of the streets in this area are as narrow as 2.5 to 3 meter wide. So here the only requirement that was there was to make this particular street vibrant and lit up. So we used street art, wall art, lighting, all these means to make these kind of streets more vibrant. There's one particular area where there's a pedestrian bridge which crosses across a canal. So we thought, why don't we use this as an opportunity to create shaded landscaped crossover point that was very widely appreciated. There's one small clubhouse where the local community gathers, interacts. So we thought, why don't we use the space in front of the clubhouse to make it more vibrant, traffic calmed, and let people realize that this could be used as a public space. The other achievement through this S4P program was this particular park, where now CSML is planning to figure out how do they make this park more inclusive by removing the boundary wall. The local residents and local stakeholders have shown a lot of interest to remove the boundary wall. And once this happens, this might become one of the most important public spaces of the community. Once it becomes an important space for the community, there are ample opportunities of having community-based events in this particular area. There are a lot of, and these are images from the site, there are a lot of wasted material which are lying across the site. So we did an inventory of all the wasted material, and we tried to understand what can we do with these wasted material. Interestingly, there are enough and more opportunity to reuse some of this wasted material to create street furniture, landscape elements, and other features. So this also helps us reduce clutter, reduce wasted material in the surrounding of this area. So we plan to use these refrigerators for open libraries, these sofas for street furniture in some of the areas. So that's it. So in the nutshell, what the success was that some of the interventions as part of the S4P design suggestions are now being implemented on a permanent basis. And the others which give us an opportunity to test behavioral changes like reclaiming spaces, making spaces more vibrant, those kind of interventions are being taken up on tactical interventions. So that's where we are.
Sure. Thank you so much, Adarsh from Team Kochi. I think you have just shown the very essence of the Streets for People challenge by focusing on different types of neighborhoods, one which focuses on tourists, but one which is very much focused on low and middle class residential neighborhoods. The one thing that I really liked was the way you had clear intent. You had clear intents for the two different neighborhoods, and you were working towards achieving those intents. Also on how you are building on the existing opportunities. You're using this platform to test different kinds of interventions and looking at how you can add vibrance and livability to what sometimes already exists as an existing opportunity. The last piece that I'd really like to also focus was on how you're converging the different ongoing government initiatives, because the smart city and the vision is to bring all these initiatives together and tie them together to create meaningful, impactful transformation on the ground. And to just see that in your presentation was really interesting. And also how you were, last but not the least, about looking at integrating recycling of material. We'd seen that in Aurangabad as well, in Cycles for Change. And sometimes it's not about these expensive new things that you have, but what can you do with what you already have, and how can you reuse it in the best way? That was like very, very, very enlightening and very interesting to see in your presentation. Before I move into questions, I'd really like to invite Mr. Kunal Kumar, IAS, the Joint Secretary of Smart Cities Mission, to share your thoughts on, sir, what did you think about Kochi's presentation, and a few words to encourage all our 41 cities in this cohort to really move on to the next step before they make their submissions. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, am I audible, Ashwati?
Yes, sir, very clear.
Great. No, so Adarsh, probably one of the best presentations I've seen on street design in our country. People make these presentations from abroad, and I just wonder when will one of our cities make these presentations. So today has been the day. Good. You have done a lot of things, and Aswati has summed it up. I'll not repeat them. And because it is question session, I'll have a couple of them for you, not as questions but as reflections. First, who is the biggest owner of this entire project? And I'm not talking of you or the commissioner or the smart city CEO. Who in the city is championing this project? Second, how are the people near these streets and in the neighborhood engaged with it? Are they merely engaged with it in using it? Are they engaged with it in giving suggestions about it? Or are they even engaged in its future sustainability? And that leads me to the third question. What will ensure that your streets will keep looking the same or better 3 to 5 years down the line? How do you make that happen? And not only that, how does this inspire other places in your city, other neighborhoods, to replicate this? So what you do in 3 to 5, whatever you do in maybe this one location, actually ends up triggering many such applications across the city. How do you think about it in a systemic way and in a way that the city owns it and engages with it? That's the overarching theme of my question.
So should I?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. I'll try my best to answer your questions. So the transport strategy document, which I started with, has been adopted by Kochi Corporation and Smart City Limited. So we have an owner of the whole project, and even S4P interventions would happen through Smart City Limited, which provides a long-term opportunity for making some of these changes permanent, which you already saw. Some of the interventions are now becoming permanent because they realize that they have to own it, so they better make sure that the money invested in it is for a longer duration, and they use whatever money is required for testing very consciously and very cautiously. So all the testing are very focused. So for example, when we are testing reclaiming parking spaces, that is a major concern for Kochi city, and they want to test it. So they're very conscious about that particular tactical intervention. Where they are making streets safer for kids, that's a very specific requirement for the city. So all these tactical interventions were prepared based on the requirements of the local residents. So while the smart city and Kochi Municipal Corporation might own this up, I personally feel it's the local residents who buy into these ideas. So when we started formulating some of these or giving shape to some of these ideas, we had discussions, formal and informal discussion with local residents. The competition ideas were very contextual, what we got. We used that. We refined a little bit of that based on the implementation concerns, discussed with the stakeholders, and then we found merit in incorporating those ideas in the overall strategy. So through that, I answered the first one. The long-term sustainability of this is twofold. One is implementation, where the Kochi Smart City Limited and Kochi Corporation is implementing it, and buy-in and adopting it. So the local requirements being built into these tactical interventions allow us to make sure that they are a participant in this whole process and not just a bystander. So through that, we also see that overall maintenance, operation, and management would become a participatory one rather than just an institution-driven approach. So that's the second one. And the third one, I would say, through the overall strategy of transport vision that they already have, luckily, they already have all the provisions to upscale this. Now, with the permanent interventions, they also realize the benefit of junction improvement, street improvement, lighting, signage, which they are now going to put in all these areas. And that can be upscaled to a larger extent through the transport strategy. So I would say because there was some amount of clear thought process involved in converging some of their previous works with the S4P strategy. That's one of the reasons why the Kochi Smart City Limited is confident in upscaling all of this. This is not new for them, I would say. This is, like Aswati mentioned, they wanted to align all their activities, use this as a means to test some of their strategies. So through that, I feel that it's easier for them to upscale it. Had it been a completely new work for them, they might have spent some more time to figure out how do they upscale or institutionalize or make it more permanent. But because there was some amount of homework, there was some amount of involvement from Smart City and CSM Corporation and local residents, now they're in a better position to say that, yes, whatever outcomes come from S4P initiative are a value addition to whatever we are doing and provides us an opportunity to make it a long-term thing rather than just an event. So that, I think, is a very big success for the S4P program.
There's a lot we can talk about this, Adarsh. In fact, going forward, what we have to do is consciously, of course, step up one by one on the ladder and look at sustainability in a more community-centric way, and almost get the smart city or the corporation out of it in a way that it becomes continued, sort of without their active participation in the maintenance. Somehow that has to become possible. But I'm just wondering whether Cycles for Change and Streets for People is a coincidence at 41, or is it by some design, or what is it like? Both competitions have been 41 cities, right?
I mean,
add Ashwati, it's actually 42, sir. As in, one city had launched, I think Trichy Corporation, if I'm wrong, had launched. So it's become 42 for S4P, right?
So I don't know if those cities which have not participated or are not in this are there in the call. But to me, it is a bit disappointing as to why only 41 or 42. Because we're not piloting cities, we are piloting interventions. Of course, we are piloting interventions in all cities. That's the goal. So if any of these cities who are there on the call who have not yet participated, it's all about taking the leadership, taking the vision forward, and doing small things. It's not about you don't need to commit for a long time. Just look at it, try something. Maybe that gives you some idea. Maybe that gives you something new to think about your city, the way it can be taken forward. And by the way, the inspiration doesn't need to come from anywhere else. Just walk on your streets for a day or two, for an hour or two, in places where there is dense traffic and all. You imagine how people can make it, because people do travel every day on foot, and what they would be feeling and how things look like in the city for people who want to walk and cycle, basically contribute positively to the environment. But they have to go through all the hell. Why can't we make our cities more cycling and walking friendly? Now, I understand this entire question of ownership is there, because ultimately officers come and go, consultants come and go, people who work for you come and go, but the city needs to own it. But it's kind of a chicken and egg problem. And if you're a vegetarian, it's a plant and seed problem, I can say that. So by that I mean, you need to have something to see to be able to create that vision which can be owned. So what I'm saying is, as an officer, as a team, as a smart city, just do that much, and it becomes a movement in itself, because then the politicians latch onto it. And initially you will have severe opposition. Why are you doing this? Don't need to do this. Widen the street. That's enough. Cars can go through. But then you see something like this, if GIZ, Adarsh and Mr. Malik, who's the CEO, and they combine together and actually do something on ground, and then the politicians catch on to it, and everyone in the city catches. I also want this in my place. I want this in my neighborhood. Then it becomes a thing which they have seen and they're trying to copy, or trying to replicate, or trying to at least stir their mind about it. This is also the realm of the possible. So this is very important. That's why that we do these tactical interventions in small little ways to ignite that inspiration. So all of you, if you're not there in the competition yet and you're thinking of not participating or participating, please do. In the sense, Secretary Sir had told clearly that all of you have to participate. And my request to all of you is, please participate. It's just built for you. So much of hard work is being done, and you will reap the benefits, as in you personally as well, because of your learning, as well as city will reap tremendous benefits because of it. So, Aswati, I'll stop here and not carry on with my monologue. Thank you so much for this space.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the inspiration. I'm sure the cities will act and we'll have some fantastic submissions by the end of this particular month. Thank you so much. And thank you, Adarsh, for joining us. Before you leave us, one last question, which we've heard from the audience as well, was particularly with respect to parking. Like when we do want to create public spaces for people, one of the most, and even in your presentation, you had mentioned about how parking is taking over our public spaces, and you're looking at how that can be reversed. So if you could very briefly, in a couple of minutes, just talk about how are you in Kochi planning to tackle that?
Thank you, Aswati. And before I answer that question, I have to say that this whole proposal was a joint effort. So I might be presenting alone, but there are people from Smart City Limited who are involved actively in making sure that the proposal is realistic and implementable. As far as the parking goes, yes, Kochi also has a problem of parking. So we have to identify the stretches and corridors very cautiously. We have to identify areas which are prominent commercial zones where you see that the commercial benefits of removing parking is visible. So it was easier to communicate them. We had to choose areas which are closer to public spaces where we could tell the residents and the local stakeholders what are the benefits of removing parking. So initial couple of consultation workshops that Smart City organized with the local residents, they did come up with these kind of problems. But when we showed them very simple solutions of organizing the space, we never said that we are going to remove the parking. We said we are just organizing it. We are making sure that the parking is moved to a certain zone, whereas a larger portion of the public space is available for maybe hotels to have their food events, maybe public spaces to spill over, for residents to enjoy with their kids. So that showing them the benefit was a success in getting their buy-in. So I would say we haven't solved the problem of the parking. We've just encouraged the local residents to put the parking in one area and reuse the public space for walking and other kinds of recreation, active recreation.
Sure, Adarsh. Yeah, so, highlighting on the fact that we need to organize parking and demarcate it, and, the cities need to enforce it through probably pricing in the next steps. Thanks for sort of leaving our cities with that learning as well. So with that, we shall move on to the next stage. Thank you so much, Team Kochi, for joining us today. And moving on to the presentation. Can you see my screen, Venu?
We can.
Sure. So we're all sort of running or reaching the last leg of the stage 1 submission. Of course, our work would continue beyond July 31st as well, but we are reaching this very important milestone, and we'd like to just share with you what are the key actions that we encourage you to take during this last month. As you know, in our challenge had 4 clear milestones, and most of you have already identified, all of you have in fact identified pilot locations and hosted city-led design competitions. Currently, we are in the phase of testing pilot interventions and scaling them up for long-term impact. It's been fantastic to see how each one of you have engaged with your community and built momentum for the Streets for People challenge throughout this entire program. So let me just quickly take you through what we had summarized, take you through a summary of our previous workshop. You are in a stage where all of you are going to test your pilots. The testing of the pilot intervention is divided into largely two phases. One is refining the winning design, and 2 is the actions that needs to be done during the implementation. So what needs to be done prior to pilot testing, during pilot testing, and after pilot testing. So jumping straight into the refining of winning designs, most of you have already worked with your winning teams to refine the design, but I'd encourage all the other 20 cities to also finalize your winning entry and work with the winning team. Like we saw in Kochi, I would encourage all of you to look at how you can also encourage or integrate cycling and cycling intervention. We invite you to join discussions with us. We've been having discussions with many cities, and if you haven't set up a conversation, please feel free to reach out to us. We would be really interested in seeing your plans and helping you refine them as well. and present this design, take them back to the community and build your community support as well, which is very, very critical for a successful intervention. We have shared design guidelines from the India Cycles for Change challenge for integrating cycling interventions, and I would encourage all of you to go and take a look at that one as well. Now, before you pilot testing, it's important for us to create a detailed work schedule. Prepare a traffic management plan. So if there are certain sections where traffic is being closed, how are you planning to reroute the traffic is an important component, and that's what the traffic management plan will look into. Identify stakeholders, the different stakeholders who can share your responsibilities such that it does not seem overwhelming for you at this point. And also seek necessary approvals from the different departments in order to test your pilot. During the pilot interventions, it's very important for you to prepare the site. So for example, if there are potholes or if there are certain challenges that needs to be fixed, we encourage you to prepare and fix those issues. Outline the proposed design on the ground and put in effect an alternative traffic management plan. So prior to implementing the final design, you could do a couple of days of testing of this traffic plan to refine it as well. Seek support from traffic police and other volunteers to enforce and implement the traffic plan. Once you have your space, once you have reclaimed your street space and worked out the traffic plan, we encourage you to use quick, low-cost, innovative materials such as segregators to make sure that traffic does not enter your public space, or in the case of shared zone, your citizens are protected from moving traffic. Add elements such as seating, place-making elements such as play equipments for young children, surface treatment to enliven the road space, as well as signages to inform the new traffic regulations. Please do check out our implementation guide for more details on the implementation elements. As we heard from Team Kochi, it's very important for us to program our pilot and make sure that it's livable and that it brings people together in a safe manner. So here are some examples that we have shared, but please do look at the guide for program pilots where more details have been shared. So you can think of conducting heritage or tree walks, reading session for young children, campaigns for highlighting local issues, allowing local markets to be set up, or encouraging restaurants to spill out like the way we heard from Kochi. And also, it's important to keep some areas flexible so that stakeholders such as children can make it their own. So creating some pop-up play spaces as well. As you have your pilot, as you've created your pilot, it would be very important for you to launch it and spread the word. Showcase and encourage participation. Make sure that you have your enforcement in place and the place is maintained every day. Now, we encourage you to roll out an open streets campaign along with the pilot intervention and kickstart a Streets for People revolution in your city. These templates will be shared with you to spread the word. So summarizing, when you come, as we are at the testing pilot intervention phase, we need to focus once again on refining our winning design. Look at the activities that needs to be done before pilot testing, what needs to be put in place during pilot testing and after pilot testing. Now, as we gear up for these pilot interventions, a detailed pilot implementation guide has already been shared, and I encourage you to look into that. But it's now the time for us to look into how do we capture learnings from what we have done and what we're going to do. So here, this particular piece is divided into two main milestones. One is to reflect on the collaborative pilot design and testing process that you all have undertaken until today and going forward as well, and to measure the impact of the pilot. So firstly, we would really like you to reflect on your journey so far. This is a great opportunity for you to document your collaborative process, discuss what worked, what did not work, and compile the learnings for the future. We would really like you to embed this participatory approach into every piece of project that you are engaged in. So what is it that we'd like you to do? We would like you to organize an SOP working team meeting with your team members, but also CSOs, NGOs, jury members, experts, or community representatives, and everyone who's been a part of the core team that helped in rolling this program out. In order to moderate the discussion and have a meaningful discussion with the team, we would be sharing with you a questionnaire, which you can use this period to reflect on what could have improved, what worked for you, so that could be put to practice in other projects as well. Secondly, and very importantly, it's very, very essential for us to measure the impact of the pilot. This is important because it helps you assess if the intervention has made a positive impact or not. It would help you showcase the benefits of the initiative to citizens and decision makers. You can build support for more similar projects in the future. And it's also important to know whether all the features that you're testing really work. So gathering feedback from the user so that you can tweak your design is one of the most important steps of the testing process itself. So in order to understand how you collect these, how you gather this impact, it's important for you to understand who your stakeholders are and what their concerns are. So know your stakeholders, understand what might their concerns be, and capture and present a relevant impact point. So here, if I could give you an example. So for example, when you are looking at pedestrianizing commercial streets or markets, shop owners are one of your critical stakeholders. Their concern might be the loss in business due to reduced parking spaces. So when the test is implemented, it's a great time for you to identify and study if their concern is actually true, or if there are findings which you can share with them to set aside their concerns. And these sort of issues are not things that happen only in Indian cities. These are issues that happen worldwide. Even in New York, when Times Square was getting pedestrianized, there was a lot of pushback from the local shopkeepers. And these impact studies help them show that, for example, there was an increase in pedestrian activity, a greater decrease in pedestrian accidents, as well as the economic benefits, which is increase in turnover for the shops in the area and improvement in economic performance. So depending on your different stakeholders, you could collect relevant information to share or to help them set aside their fears or concerns. So how can you measure the impact of your pilot? There are 4 steps, and I would go one by one. First, it's important for you to document the pilot through photos and videos. Nothing tells a story stronger than really impactful and moving pictures. So in order to tell a good story, it would be important for you to document the site before testing, during testing, and after testing. So the before and after could actually help stakeholders understand the transformation and the impact. Sometimes a lot of cities focus on getting the after pictures, but it's with a very, it's by showing what was that what is would really make a lot of impact. Here we're just going to share very quickly some tips to take good photographs. It's really important to capture happy faces and emotions in your photographs. Capture the pilot when they're actively used by diverse set of people. See if you can capture young girls, young children, different sets of people, young and elderly, persons of different abilities, all of them sort of using this particular space and really engaging in the activities that you have shared. So as you're looking at capturing different stakeholders, also capture the different activities that you've set up and how your citizens have been engaging with them. So these are examples of, when you have music, or if you have people dancing or playing, as well as yoga sessions or reading sessions, anything that, any sort of programming, it'll be great for you to capture those images. As I shared before, it's very important to show how the space was before and after to show the impact of the space. So please try to take these pictures in the same angle. When you are at the pedestrian view, do try to take pictures during peak times when there's very unorganized parking, etc., so that when you do organize parking and reclaim spaces, the impact can be very clearly seen. Capture how the pilot is being used at different times of the day, and also during peak and non-peak hours. So here are some pictures, which we're showing just to show you how that impact can be. So this is the Times Square itself, the way it was used by vehicles, and then how it was transformed into a pedestrian space. Here again, a parking space in Pearl Street Plaza, and you can see how that space was converted into the plaza in your picture to the right. So showing these before and after pictures can be very useful. Next is to look at or conduct volume counts as well as activity surveys. This is very important for you to measure the impact on footfall and activities after pilot implementation. You could do this by identifying volunteers and orienting them, conducting surveys before and after the testing, collecting and compiling data which is disaggregated by gender and age, and analyzing the data and presenting impact. We will share a guide and template for conducting these counts and surveys, and also conduct these surveys during peak hours and avoid rolling them out during special occasions. So the data that you do collect can be impactfully showcased, like this example, where in this site, and after the intervention was piloted, and with this analysis, the city was able to clearly say that there was a 65% increase on people spending time in the sidewalks once they were expanded. Third, it's very important for us to also get stories and feedback from citizens. This can be used for you to convince your stakeholders who may be pushing back. You could do this by setting up feedback boards or panels, by conducting personal interviews as well as observations, and by organizing public consultation sessions. So, for example, sometimes what happens is that what we imagine in a street and the kind of activities that take place once you create the public space might be quite diverse. So, to give you an example, when we were engaged in creating the first pedestrian plaza in Chennai, the aim was to create a comfortable and attractive commercial space for the shoppers of this neighborhood. But one evening when we were walking by, we saw a young school-going boy sitting on a seater under a street light doing his homework. Speaking to him gave us a story of how this public space has now become a space for him to do his work, especially since the area inside his household was extremely small and filled with many household members as well. So these sort of stories help you really showcase how your space has become special to the users of the space. We also encourage you to repeat the walking audit to assess the design intervention and identify if there are any on-ground concerns that persist. The whole idea of testing an intervention is not to get the most perfect intervention at the first go. If there are, the intention itself is to be able to refine these interventions and make them suit the needs of your citizens. So we encourage you to form the audit team with a diverse set of stakeholders, use the walking audit checklist, and go back to the ground and see if your design has helped change the challenges that you had first identified. Compile and analyze your findings in comparison to the previous audit. Download the walking audit guide and checklist from the website. So as you all are at this last leg of our challenge, we encourage you to keep the pilot test, in fact, until you convert them into permanent infrastructure, but definitely at least for a month. We understand that multiple cities are at different junctures, also with the pandemic. So if you feel that the entire length of the intervention cannot be tested, we encourage you to start with at least smaller, meaningful sections, which can then be expanded over the months. I would like to, highlight that between today and 31st July is the time when you have to submit your stage 1 submission. Please do test your pilot on the ground within this timeline, but please go ahead and adding pilots through your period going ahead as well. And it's on 16th August that we would like you to share the captured learning documents. The format and template for submission will be shared with the cities very soon. Finally, we also encourage you to kickstart your scale-up activities, and you can scale up Streets for People activities through 3 clear steps. creating institutional setup, policy adoption, and scaling up strategy. A detailed guide for scaling up has already been shared. You can also check it on our S4P website. So before I close for today, I would like to, really sort of congratulate all of you for the journey so far and wish you the very best in order to create some fantastic pilots. We're all looking forward to your great pilots. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwati, for the presentation and taking the team through how effectively they can do testing on the ground, capturing the learnings and assessing the impact. We have a couple of questions that have come up. The first one is on how long is it ideal to leave the pilot on the ground to assess the impact thoroughly? And yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Venu. So, like I just mentioned during the presentation as well, we really encourage you to leave the pilot on the ground for at least a month. And that gives, enough time for the citizens, for you to plan various activities in your site, for the citizens to use this site as well. So please do leave it at least for a month. We encourage you to also keep it because you have taken such a lot of effort in refining your design, and you would be using all of these elements to enliven this space up, especially in this time when we do not have enough public spaces. You would be doing a great service to the city by creating these open spaces that citizens can use. So if you can keep it open until you convert them into permanent, that would be the best. But please do leave it at least for a month and ensure to document the site and get data before testing as well as after in order to understand what the impacts have been on ground.
Thanks, Ashwati. There's a question from the CEO of Jabalpur Smart City on what are the different ways that we could capture the responses from the people. The Jabalpur team is currently looking at suggestion boxes, but apart from that, what are some of the other examples that have worked in other cities that could be shared?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, sir, for this question. So there could be multiple ways, like the way as we had mentioned in the presentation, but just adding a bit more. So the suggestion boxes are a great idea, but we could also probably leave feedback boards with sticky notes so that, people who do come there and if they've seen something, they can immediately sort of write what their feedback was and then just post it on the feedback board or any panel that you could leave out there. You can also do on the ground survey. So if you have some volunteers who are standing, who are there at site at certain times of the day, or in fact, different times of the day to see who are the kind of people using this space, and then gathering their feedback would be very, very, very useful. You can also use online forms with QR codes printed. That's also something that you could use if you do not have the support of volunteers. Another piece that is also important that I'd like to share is that it's not only about the users who use the space, but it's equally important to see if some users are not using the space. So sometimes research has shown that girls, when they are, boys and girls until the age of 8, sometimes use public spaces together. But after that, while boys may tend to use playgrounds for physical activity, girls after the age of 8 are sometimes not seen in our public space. So keep an eye out for the kind of stakeholders who are probably not using your space as well, and see how or what is it that might be hindering them from using the public space.
Thank you, Ashwati. That's about it. If you have any further questions to all the cities, kindly feel free to reach out to the coordinating team and we'll get back to you at the earliest. Yes. So thanks, Ashwati. And with that, I'd like to invite Bala Nagdendran, Research Associate at ITDP, and who's been closely involved in all the technical guidance preparation for the S4P cities. He will take us through the submission templates and the evaluation guide through a very crisp presentation. Over to you, Bala.
Thank you, Venu. Am I audible and my screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Venu. So good evening all. So today I will take into the evaluation process quickly. As we discussed, the stage 1 deadlines are fast approaching, and so this would be like a very brief overview of the submission requirements and also the evaluation process. So today we are on 8th July As Shruti mentioned, the submission template and form will be shared with the cities very soon. As a first part of the submission, which is due on 31st July, we expect all the cities to submit 2 presentations to cover the pilot intervention and also the scale-up strategy and the building support component that you have worked on so far. And in continuation to that, by 16th July, the cities could add 2 more components to their evaluation process. One is a presentation on capturing learnings. So we saw in detail on the different tools and the reasons for capturing learnings. So the insights from all of that should be covered as a presentation along with the scale-up strategy and plan. And as the second component is a video which should cover the entire journey of your city through the entire stage 1 process and all the activities. Once the cities submit both the stages, by the last week of August, the shortlisted cities will present to the jury, and in September, the top 11 cities will be announced. So we have clearly mentioned that there are 2 timelines for submission. So one is 31st July and one is 16th August. Through the competition, through the challenge process, we have always spoken about the 3 components of pilot intervention, scale-up strategy, and building momentum for SOP initiatives itself. So there could be a confusion on what should be covered in which submission phase. So this is like an overview on that. By 31st July, under the pilot intervention, we expect all the cities to have tested at least 1 pilot on the ground. Whereas you could capture the learnings through the next 2 weeks and submit the insights on that by 16th August. With respect to scale-up strategy, by 31st July, the city should have created the Apex committee and also should update on the progress made towards setting up Healthy Streets department and also adopting Healthy Streets policy. By 16th August, you can add your other strategies and plan for scale-up along with the progress on budget approval. And finally, with respect to building support, so far the cities have done a lot of open streets campaign, perception survey, and a lot of you also have done multiple stakeholder engagement activities. So please make sure to cover all of that in your presentation for 31st July submission. Whereas if at all your city have done any work already on institutionalizing those open streets campaigns, we encourage you to add that in the 16th August presentation. If you have not done it before, we also encourage you to do it over the next course of 4 weeks so that that can make a better pitch in your scale-up presentation itself. Towards making this whole submission process more seamless and also easy for the cities, we will be sharing a submission guide and checklist soon. The submission guide will tell you exactly the deliverables list and also how the format should be. To give an overview on that, for the July 31st submission, the key deliverables are 2 presentations, as I mentioned, each of maximum 30 slides. The cities are also expected to share 10 high quality photographs. In addition to this, if your city has any other documents which you think are important for us to understand your project in whole, please do share that as well. The maximum of 5 additional documents could be shared by each city. The form will also have 3 questions which will help us understand more about your project. Please do attach a cover letter also. As part of this August 16th submission, there will be 1 presentation which primarily focus on capturing learnings. It could be a maximum of 15 slides and that should be a video as well. We'll also share a guidance on video template and also how to make the video. So this checklist will ensure that you do not miss out any of your previous activities and also the components that you have worked so far. But this is not an exhaustive list. If you think you have more to add to your evaluation form, please feel free to reach to us. And finally, on the evaluation scoring, so the cities will be evaluated over a 20 marks benchmark, whereas the pilot intervention and scale-up strategy will have 80 marks each, and the building support component will have 40 marks. So if you see here, all the components that you have worked on so far and that we have covered in today's presentation have its own weightage. So we very strongly nudge you to work on all of them equally and give a strong presentation for submission. So meanwhile, the Streets4People team will share the presentation and video of this session and also the guidance for capturing learnings. We'll soon also share the submission template for presentation and submission form. So thank you so much. Venu, over to you.
Thank you, Bala, for taking everyone through the submission requirements and the evaluation overview. We have one question that has come up on if the city has not submitted the stage 1 requirement as on 31st July, can the city submit all the deliverables directly on the 16th of August? Would you like to take that, or should I?
Yeah, sure. So I think we also have made clear in the previous collateral we shared, like all the cities have to submit the first part of the submission by 31st. The extension of 2 weeks is primarily for them to test their pilots and capture learnings, but the testing primarily should happen before the 31st. But in case any cities do the testing after 31st, feel free to reach to us. We can definitely add your progress, but we definitely nudge all of you to make the first part of the submission by 31st.
Thank you, Bala. We don't have any more questions, but before we wrap up, Ashwati, would you like to add something else, or?
Well, I would once again, like I said, encourage all cities to test their pilots and capture the impacts on the ground. And I would once more stress that, our cities do not have as many public spaces as they need. And this is a period of time when most of us are also within our homes, and we're looking forward to having safe public spaces in our neighborhood so that we can step out in a very safe manner. So any of these spaces that you create would add a lot of value to the lives of your citizens. So we encourage you to create these pilots. And while 31st July is the deadline, and we would want you to share with us all the work that you've done so far and whatever pilots that you've tested. But this is just the beginning of a long journey that we will share, that we will have with you as we transform our cities into Streets for People. So continue to test further pilots into August as well and the upcoming months. But yeah, best of luck with your pilots once again.
Thanks, Ashwati, and thank you, everyone. With that, we have come to the end of the final workshop of stage 1 of the Streets for People Challenge. On behalf of the technical communications coordinating team, everyone, it's been a great journey interacting with different nodal officers of all the cities. A heartfelt thank you from all of us to the senior officials, engineers, project management consultants, community partners, and all the other stakeholders who have been part of the journey for each of the cities, and to all of you who have tuned in on YouTube and on Zoom for this particular workshop. Thank you so much, everyone. And to the coordinating team for any queries. Yes, Ashwati.
Just, I'm so sorry.
No,
so there was this question, saying is from one of our participants who said, is there a possibility to start from the beginning? So just before we close, I'd just like to say that for cities who are probably just starting, there are multiple cities who have reached out to us right now saying that they'd like to be a part of this journey, and we welcome all of you with open hands. And we would be announced, we will guide you through this process, and there will be another set of submissions which will come forth for you with a new set of timelines as well. But and so don't feel dejected. We are there for you, and we will share a timeline with you, and we will help all of you also through this journey. At the same time, the 41 cities who have started, we would encourage you, because you have a momentum that's already working to your advantage. So please do use that momentum, refine your designs, test them, pilot them, and let's have some fantastic submissions by the end of this month. Thank you. Yes, Venu, over to you again.
Angi from our coordinating team has shared the contact address, and most of you have the contact numbers of the coordinating team as well. So please reach out if you are part of a city who is yet to launch the design competition or would like to become more active and take the steps towards the on-ground implementation. So good luck to all the cities. We look forward to impactful pilots on the ground in the coming weeks, comprehensive submissions, and also permanent transformation in the months and the years ahead. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.